Hello, my name is Colin Adams and I'm the pastor of Greenview Church on the south side of Glasgow. Whatever you think about it, the resurrection demands an explanation. Even secular historians have admitted that the resurrection is a big problem. You see, either Jesus did rise from the dead, in which case you have to accept the miraculous, or he didn't rise from the dead, in which case you have to explain, well, what did happen? So why do I, as a Christian, believe that Jesus really did rise from the dead? Let me give you 5 quick reasons. First, the story of the whole Bible moves towards a resurrection. The Bible begins with one man, Adam, who sins and brings death into the whole world. But from Genesis on, the Bible promises another man. Not a sinful man, but a sin-bearing man who will suffer on the cross and then rise from the dead. It's often known that Jesus' death is predicted in the Old Testament. But did you know that his resurrection is predicted as well in places like Psalm 16? So I believe that Jesus was raised because the Bible had been promising one who would conquer the grave. Second, the gospel accounts have the mark of authenticity. One example of this is the appearance of the women at the empty tomb. According to the Gospels, it was the women who first discovered the empty tomb. But in those days, sadly, women were looked down upon. The New Testament scholar N.T. Wright points out that there would have been enormous pressure to remove women from those Gospel accounts. But we find them in the Gospels because the Gospels are a report of what actually happened. Third, I believe in the resurrection because of the many witnesses. You see, it's not just that the tomb was empty, it's that there were many witnesses who claimed to have seen the risen Jesus. We read about them in 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul says that Jesus appeared to Peter, and then to the 12, and then to even 500 people all at once, many of whom, Paul says, were still living. So any of Paul's readers could have gone and spoken to the hundreds of witnesses. They could have seen whether Paul's claim was just a fake. The fourth thing is the lack of good alternative explanations. The counter explanations that people give to the resurrection are themselves not credible. Jesus didn't really die. But the Romans were highly skilled at killing people. Jesus' disciples stole the body. But why would they have done that? How would they have got past the armed guards? And why later would they have died for something they knew wasn't true? The Jewish or Roman authorities took the body. But the resurrection to them was a difficulty, politically and religiously. It was all a mass hallucination. They all just imagined it. But we know that hallucinations don't happen on a mass scale. Anyone in the medical profession will tell you that. Fifthly and finally, I believe the resurrection because of what happened next. So thousands of people became Christians in the weeks after the resurrection. The number grew from 120 to 3,000 to 5,000. And within a few centuries, Christianity had spread across Europe. It had become the official religion of the Roman Empire. Consider as well that many of the early Christians suffered and died for their faith. Tradition tells us that 11 out of the 12 apostles gave their lives as martyrs. Again, I ask you the question, would you die for something that you knew wasn't true? So for me, these are some of the compelling reasons to believe in the resurrection. And if this is true, then the resurrection changes everything. First, it means that my biggest problem has been dealt with. The Bible tells us that the resurrection proves that our sins were paid for on the cross, that Jesus' sacrifice was sufficient. The resurrection means that all of the mess of my life can be cleaned up and forgiven by God. But for that to happen, I need to admit my sin and trust in Jesus as my only hope of salvation. And the resurrection also means that there is hope for a world in despair. In a world full of cancer and wars and Brexit wrangling, The resurrection reminds us that there's something more to life than this. There is more beyond this life. There is new life, a new body, and a promise of a whole new world ahead. That means that the resurrection isn't just an interesting historical question. It's a life-changing reality. Happy Easter.
See what